A single light flickered in the darkness. Not in Adrian Sterling's bedroom. Not in his home theater or his climate-controlled wine vault or any of the 17 rooms he actually used in his 40-room Manhattan mansion. The light came from the laundry room. Adrian had paid architects $2 million to design this estate. He knew every electrical outlet, every switch, every corner. The laundry room was supposed to be dark at this hour. Empty. Invisible, like everything else in his life that served a purpose but didn't matter. Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back. I'm so grateful you're here with me tonight. Before we dive into this absolutely life-changing story, where are you watching from right now? I'd genuinely love to know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please, I'm asking you personally, hit that button. It means everything. Now, let's begin. He moved through the shadows in silk pajamas, barefoot against marble that costs more per square inch than most people's monthly rent. His mind was fractured. 36 hours without sleep. A CFO caught embezzling $3.2 million. A daughter he'd fired had cried. Adrian had given him the severance check anyway, generous because cruelty was inefficient. But sleep wouldn't come. That's when he saw it. The light beneath the laundry room door wasn't steady. It trembled, like it might die at any second. His hand went to the doorknob before his brain caught up. When he opened the door, the world stopped. A girl, 14, maybe 15, sat on cold concrete in an oversized hoodie with a rip along the seam. Around her lay the evidence of quiet desperation, a textbook so destroyed it looked like it had been fished out of the ocean, held together with string and tape. A notebook so worn the pages were held together with what looked like prayer. A pencil stub no longer than his pinky finger. But that wasn't what stopped his heart. It was her face. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she wasn't crying. Not really. Her jaw was clenched with something harder than sadness. Her dark eyes were fixed on the pages with the kind of focus that made your chest hurt to witness. She was whispering to herself, and Adrian caught fragments. Can't do this. Mom is working 3 jobs. I'm sitting here falling apart over chemistry. Who am I to fall apart? And then she did something that shattered Adrian's entire worldview in a single moment. She wiped her tears, looked back at the textbook, and kept reading. Not because she had to pass a test. Because she couldn't afford not to. Adrian froze in the doorway. In 30 years of building a $47 billion empire, he'd learned to read people like contracts. This girl wasn't studying to get ahead. She was studying to survive. Every word on that page was a brick in a wall she was building between herself and a future that looked like her mother's, 16-hour days, invisible labor, a life spent in other people's shadows. The girl's head snapped up. Their eyes locked, and Adrian saw the exact second her entire body went rigid with terror. Don't. Sophia's voice cracked. She scrambled to gather her things, her hands shaking.
I'm sorry.
Mom didn't know. I just needed somewhere quiet, somewhere with light, and I didn't want to use the electricity at home because she's already. Stop, Adrian said quietly. She froze mid-word, her eyes wide with fear. What's your name? Sophia, she whispered, as if the name itself was something she needed permission to speak. Sophia Chen. My mom is Rosa. She works in your cleaning staff, and I'm so sorry, Mr. Sterling. If you want to fire her, I understand. Just please don't. Why are you studying at 2 a.m.? Adrian cut her off, his voice suddenly rough. Sophia's jaw tightened. Because tomorrow I have a chemistry exam. And if I fail it, I lose my scholarship opportunity. And if I lose that... She looked down at the destroyed textbook. My mom will have to take a second job. She's already working herself to death for me, and I can't. I won't let her sacrifice herself for nothing. Adrian stared at her. In that moment, in that single crystalline moment, he understood something that all his billions had never taught him. Some people didn't need money. They needed someone to see them. And Sophia Chen had just shown him something his entire life had been missing. He sat down on the cold concrete floor, his silk robe suddenly absurd against the industrial surroundings. Tell me everything, he said. And don't leave anything out. Sophia's eyes widened. She didn't move. She didn't understand that Adrian Sterling, a man worth $47 billion, a man who'd never sat on a floor in his life, a man who'd built an empire on seeing people as resources and problems to solve, had just decided something in the span of 3 seconds that would change all of their lives forever. Everything? Sophia asked, confusion flickering across her tear-stained face. Everything, Adrian repeated. And his voice, when it came, sounded like a man who'd just woken up from a 30-year sleep. I want to know your story. I want to know why you're here. I want to know what it costs you to sit on this floor and study by this dying light when you should be sleeping. I want to know what your mother sacrifices every single day so you can have a chance at something better. He leaned forward slightly. Because something tells me that what you're about to tell me is going to change the way I see everything. But here's what Adrian didn't know. Sophia's story wasn't just about poverty and determination. It was about a secret that would unravel his entire empire, and a truth that would force him to choose between his billions and his humanity. What happens next will absolutely devastate you. But before we continue, I need to know, are you invested in Sophia's story? Do you think Adrian is really going to help her, or is there something darker coming? Drop a comment below. Seriously, tell me what you think happens next. And if you're not subscribed yet, now is the moment. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Let's see you in the comments. Sophia spoke for 45 minutes. Adrian didn't move, didn't check his phone, didn't interrupt. A man who'd made billions by interrupting, by controlling the narrative, by never letting anyone else define the story. But Sophia's story was rewriting him. Her mother, Rosa, had come to New York 5 years ago from Manila with a nursing degree that didn't transfer, credentials that meant nothing, and a daughter she'd promised would have everything. The promise had cost her everything. 2 jobs became 3. Nights became days. She'd aged a decade in 5 years, her hands developing calluses that even Adrian's expensive moisturizing cream, sitting in his bathroom, couldn't touch. Mom doesn't know I know, Sophia whispered, her voice steadier now, stronger. She thinks I'm naive. But I hear her on the phone at night. Our landlord is raising rent again. She's behind on my tutoring payments. She tells me not to worry, that she'll figure it out, that I just need to focus on school. Adrian's jaw tightened. And your father? Sophia's eyes darkened. He left when I was 7. He said he'd send money. He hasn't. Mom stopped checking her phone for messages from him 3 years ago. There it was, the crack in her resolve. The moment where a 14-year-old girl had to become an adult, had to stop waiting for rescue, had to realize that survival was a solo sport. Adrian stood up slowly, his mind already moving, already calculating, already seeing the machinery of his empire reorganizing itself without his permission. How much money do you need? He asked. Sophia blinked. What? To finish school. To pay for tutoring. To take the pressure off your mother. How much? I don't know. I've never let myself do the math. It felt like giving up. Adrian's throat tightened. She'd never let herself do the math. A child, brilliant enough to pass advanced chemistry exams on a destroyed textbook under a dying bulb, had trained herself not to hope because hope was a luxury. He'd built his entire fortune on hope, on the assumption that all problems had solutions if you were smart enough, ruthless enough, ambitious enough. He'd never considered that some people didn't get to be ambitious. Tomorrow morning, I want you in my office, Adrian said, his voice carrying the weight of a man making a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. 8 a.m. Bring your report cards, your exam scores, everything. And Sophia? Yes. Don't tell your mother yet. Not until we figure out what's possible. Sophia nodded slowly, confusion and hope warring across her face in equal measure. Adrian left the laundry room and didn't sleep. Instead, he walked through his mansion room after room, all of it suddenly feeling like a museum dedicated to his own emptiness. The art on the walls, expensive pieces he'd bought because his decorator recommended them. The furniture, designed for aesthetic, not comfort. The wine collection, worth millions, untouched because he'd never learned to enjoy anything. He thought about his own father, dead 30 years, a man who'd built the first sterling fortune but had never taken a single day off, who'd praised Adrian's ambition while teaching him to view emotions as inefficiencies, who'd shown him that the path to power was paved with calculated indifference. Adrian had spent 3 decades perfecting that indifference, and in 45 minutes, a girl studying by a dying bulb had shattered it completely. When his assistant arrived at 6 a.m., confused by the email summoning her early, Adrian was already at his desk, surrounded by documents. "I want the company's tuition reimbursement program reviewed," he said, not looking up. "And I want a scholarship fund established. $10 million. For children of our employees. Their children specifically. I want it done today." His assistant stared at him. "Sir, the board will need to." "I don't care what the board needs." Adrian cut her off, his voice sharp. "Do it." By 7:55 a.m., Sophia stood outside his office door, still in her school uniform, her notebook clutched to her chest like armor. Her mother had kissed her goodbye that morning, no idea that her daughter was about to have her life rewritten. Adrian watched her through the glass as she approached. The way she held herself, shoulders back, trying to look brave, terrified underneath. She reminded him of himself at that age, before ambition had calcified into obsession, before power had become a substitute for purpose. He opened the door. "Come in," he said gently. Sophia stepped inside, and Adrian closed the door on the rest of the world. What happened in that office, and what Adrian decided in the hours that followed, would, within 24 hours, have his entire staff buzzing with speculation. By the end of the week, it would confound his board of directors. By the end of the month, it would transform everything. But more importantly, it would begin to transform Adrian himself. Because for the first time in 30 years, Adrian Sterling was about to discover that there was something more valuable than money. There was purpose. And purpose, he would learn, was the one thing his billions could never buy, only enable. So here's my question for you. If you were Adrian, what would you do right now? Would you just pay for her school, or would you go bigger? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how you'd handle this. And if this story is hitting you the way it's hitting me, please subscribe. We're just getting started. The inciting incident is about to change everything. Adrian's offer was simple: full tuition, tutors, living allowance for Rosa, and a scholarship that would cover everything through university. Sophia had cried. Actually cried. Not the silent tears of someone fighting despair, but the kind of sobs that came from having the weight lifted, even for a moment. "You can't do this," she'd whispered, shaking her head. "Mr. Sterling, this is too much. My mom would never accept." "Your mother doesn't have a choice," Adrian said, and the billionaire in him momentarily surfaced. The version who made decisions for other people, who believed that power meant moving people like chess pieces on a board. "I'm doing this because it's the right thing. Not for thanks. Not for gratitude. Because I can, and she clearly needs it." By 10 a.m., Adrian had called Rosa into his office. This was where everything should have gone according to plan. Instead, Rosa Chen walked in, saw her daughter standing beside Adrian Sterling's mahogany desk, and her entire face went white. "Sophia," she said, her voice ice. "Leave the room." "Mom, he's trying to help."
"Leave. Now."
Sophia looked at Adrian helplessly, then left, closing the door behind her. Rosa didn't sit down. She stood rigid, her cleaning uniform still on, dirt under her fingernails, her hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to hurt. When she spoke, her voice was controlled. "Dangerous." "What did you tell her?" Rosa asked. Adrian, unprepared for this reaction, felt something in his chest tighten. "I offered her a scholarship. And a stipend for you. I told her that her intelligence shouldn't be limited by her circumstances." "You told her a lie." Rosa cut him off. "Excuse me?" Rosa's hands clenched into fists. "My daughter has been studying that chemistry because I lied to her. I told her if she got good grades, if she passed her exams, if she was smart enough, she could have a different life." Rosa's voice cracked. "I've been lying to her for 5 years because what else could I do? Let her understand that we're drowning? Let her give up?" Adrian felt the room shift. What are you saying? He asked quietly. I'm saying, Rosa said, and now tears streamed down her face, that Sophia is brilliant. She is the smartest person I know, but being smart isn't enough. And your money, Rosa gestured around the office, at the wealth that filled every corner. Your money won't fix this. Why not? Adrian's voice was sharp now, defensive. I can provide. You can provide money, Rosa interrupted. But I've already made a decision about Sophia's future that money can't fix. Adrian stood up. What decision? Rosa looked at him, and in her eyes, Adrian saw something he'd never seen in 30 years of business, a mother willing to sacrifice everything, including her own daughter's hope, for a truth she believed in. In 3 months, Rosa said, my visa expires. I don't have the paperwork to renew it. I can't afford a lawyer. And I'm undocumented, Mr. Sterling. I have been for 2 years. Immigration found out about a clerical error from when I first arrived, and they've been quietly building a case. I got a letter 2 weeks ago.
They're deporting me.
The room went silent. And Sophia? Adrian asked, though he already knew the answer. Has to choose, Rosa whispered. Stay here with my sister and finish high school. Alone. Or come with me back to Manila and start over. Again, in a place where her education means nothing. Adrian sank back into his chair. This wasn't a problem that money could solve, not directly. Money could buy lawyers, could buy time, could buy paperwork. But it couldn't buy mercy from a system designed to be merciless. It couldn't buy the government's compassion. It couldn't buy Rosa's right to stay. How long have you known? Adrian asked. 3 weeks. I was trying to figure out how to tell Sophia. How to explain that the scholarship she's been working toward, the future we've been building, all of it disappears in 90 days when they deport me. Adrian's mind was moving now, clicking through possibilities, through solutions that felt increasingly impossible. There has to be a way. A visa sponsorship, asylum. I'm a cleaning woman with a nursing degree that no one recognizes, Rosa said bitterly. There is no way. There never was. I was always just delaying the inevitable. The door burst open. Sophia stood in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. She'd been listening. Of course she had. Mom, her voice was small, broken. What is he talking about? What do you mean, deport? Rosa's composure finally shattered. She moved toward her daughter, but Sophia stepped back, not from rejection, but from the weight of betrayal. Her mother had lied, had been lying, had been studying with her every night, pretending everything was fine, while countdown to destruction ticked away in the background. Adrian watched it unfold, and for the first time in 30 years, his money felt like a useless thing in his hands. Because Sophia's question hung in the air, unanswered. If you knew we were leaving, why did you let me study? Why did you let me hope? This is the moment everything changes. Rosa's secret just destroyed the foundation of everything. Sophia's future, and Adrian's certainty that money could fix anything, just cracked wide open. What do you think Adrian should do? Does he fight the system? Does he find a legal way to keep Rosa? Tell me in the comments what you'd do if you were him. This is the moment where the story becomes real. Subscribe now because what happens next is going to absolutely wreck you. Adrian is about to learn that some problems can't be solved with a checkbook. Adrian hired 3 immigration lawyers that same day. By evening, they delivered the same verdict. Rosa Chen's case was nearly impossible. The visa error had created a paper trail that immigration was actively investigating. She had 90 days before deportation proceedings would begin. The only legal pathways forward required either marriage to a U.S. citizen, which Adrian considered for exactly 5 seconds before recognizing that as a new kind of desperation, or a skilled worker visa sponsorship, which required a job offer that paid significantly more than cleaning, which meant Adrian had to move faster. He called his head of HR at 11 p.m. I'm creating a new position, he said. Executive Assistant in Strategic Operations. It requires a bachelor's degree in nursing or healthcare administration. I'm sponsoring Rosa Chen for a skilled worker visa. Make it happen. Sir, that position doesn't.
Make it
Happen. By morning it was done. The offer letter was in Rosa's hands. The visa sponsorship application was filed. For the first time in 2 weeks, there was oxygen in the room. But there was a problem Adrian hadn't anticipated. Sophia wouldn't speak to her mother. 3 days went by. Rosa worked her new job, a position she was vastly overqualified for, but one that gave her the visa pathway she needed. Sophia came home from school, went to her room, studied in silence. She answered her mother in monosyllables. When Rosa tried to explain that she'd been protecting her, that she'd been terrified, that she'd hoped Adrian's help would somehow change everything, Sophia just looked at her with eyes that had aged 10 years. "You lied to me," Sophia said on the 4th day. "For years." "I lied because I love you," Rosa whispered. "Then stop," Sophia said and walked out. Adrian watched it unfold from a distance, through updates from Rosa, through glimpses of Sophia in his office, when she came to use his private library to study, because the laundry room had become a place of too many memories. He saw the fracture deepening and realized that his money had solved the practical problem but created an emotional one he couldn't anticipate. On day 7, Adrian made a decision that his board of directors would later question, that his lawyers would caution against, that his publicist would call reckless. He went public. A press conference, front steps of Sterling Industries. Adrian, in a suit that cost more than most annual salaries, stood before cameras and told the story. Not for charity, not for PR, but because Sophia had asked him the question that kept him awake. Why did you let me hope? He'd realized, in those sleepless nights, that hope wasn't his to give or withhold. It was hers. And the world systems that made a brilliant girl study by a dying bulb, that made a nurse clean floors, that made families choose between education and survival, those systems needed to be seen. Rosa Chen is a registered nurse, Adrian said into the cameras. She came to this country seeking a better life for her daughter. Instead, she encountered a system designed to make that impossible. I'm using my resources to sponsor her visa. But more importantly, I'm asking every company here, every industry leader, every person watching, why are we allowing this? Why are we designing systems that punish people for wanting better? The story went viral by noon. By evening, something else happened. Adrian's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Sterling," a woman's voice said. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm a lawyer with the Immigration Justice Initiative. Your press conference just changed something. We've had 12 other cases come forward, families in similar situations in your employ in companies you do business with. We're filing a class action lawsuit. We need you on it." Adrian felt something shift. This wasn't about charity anymore. This was about structure, about systems, about using power not to rescue individuals, but to reshape the institutions that created the need for rescue in the first place. "I'm in," Adrian said. But that's when the second revelation came. It arrived in the form of an email from an unknown sender, forwarded through 3 anonymous accounts. It contained documents, old documents, from 30 years ago, immigration records, from when his own father had arrived in America, visa applications, a name that wasn't quite right, a clerical error, just like Rosa's. An irregularity that had been quietly overlooked because Adrian's father had been wealthy, connected, powerful. The email's message was simple. Some people get rescued by the system. Others get crushed by it. Your father was rescued. Sophia's mother wasn't. That's not justice, Mr. Sterling. That's just wealth. Adrian sat back in his chair, the entire architecture of his worldview reorganizing itself in real time. His father hadn't built his fortune through merit alone. He'd built it through circumstance, through luck, through a system that had bent for him because he was wealthy, because he was connected, because someone somewhere had decided to look the other way. And Adrian had spent 30 years believing his own empire was pure, that he'd earned it through intelligence and ruthlessness alone, that the world was a meritocracy, that poverty was a character flaw rather than a design feature of the system itself. Sophia appeared in his office doorway that evening, holding a piece of paper, her chemistry exam. Perfect score. Not because she was studying under a dying bulb anymore, but because someone had finally given her permission to hope. "Thank you," she said quietly. Adrian looked at this 14-year-old girl who'd shattered his entire understanding of himself and asked the question that would define the next phase of his life. Sophia, what if I told you that helping you wasn't enough? What if I told you I wanted to change the system that made you need help in the first place? Sophia's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean, Adrian said, that I'm not just your fairy tale. I'm the reason fairy tales are necessary. This is the moment Adrian Sterling stops being a billionaire savior and becomes something more dangerous, a billionaire willing to question everything. What happens when someone with ultimate power starts asking if they deserve it? Tell me in the comments, do you think he can actually change the system? Or is this just guilt talking? Subscribe because what happens next is where everything spirals. The email sender's identity arrived 3 days later. Not through legal channels. Not through a lawyer or an investigator. It came directly to Adrian's phone, a video file encrypted 7 ways with a message. Watch this. Then decide what you actually believe. Adrian sat alone in his office at midnight and pressed play. A woman's face filled the screen. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, wearing a blazer that suggested power. She was sitting in what looked like a corporate office. My name is Catherine Price, the woman said. I work for the Department of Homeland Security. I've been investigating your company for 3 years, Adrian. Not because of Rosa Chen. Because of what comes after. Adrian's stomach dropped. Your father didn't just benefit from a clerical error, Catherine continued. He bought it. He paid an immigration official $50,000 to overlook his visa irregularities. That official is now retired, living in Florida. That payment is buried in your father's accounting records, records I've been trying to access for 2 years. You have them. They're in a vault in your mansion. Adrian's hands went numb. I'm giving you 48 hours, Catherine said. You can turn over those records, which will implicate your father in federal bribery and potentially expose 30 years of companies that have used similar methods to bypass immigration law. Or you can destroy them, protect your father's legacy, and keep living the lie that you built this empire on merit. The screen went black. Adrian didn't move for an hour. His father, the man he'd spent 30 years trying to live up to emulate, to honor, had been a criminal. Had bought his way into America, had built a fortune on the foundation of corruption, not genius. And Adrian had inherited both. He walked to the vault in the sub-basement of his mansion, opened it with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and found the files. Everything Catherine had described.
$52,000. A name.
A transaction that shouldn't exist. His entire identity in a manila folder. When he finally emerged, Sophia was waiting in his study. She'd let herself in, something she'd started doing, using the access card Adrian had given her. They'd fallen into an unexpected rhythm. Her studying in his library, him asking questions, their conversations stretching into the night about justice, systems, complicity. You look like someone just died, Sophia said, not looking up from her textbook. Adrian sat down across from her. And then, in a moment that would reshape everything, he told her. Everything. His father's corruption. His own blindness. The choice he was facing. Sophia listened without interrupting. When he finished, she closed her textbook slowly. What would your father want you to do? She asked. Protect the family name. Destroy the evidence.
Keep the money.
And what do you want to do? Adrian looked at this girl who'd forced him to see himself clearly and answered honestly for the first time in 30 years. Tell the truth, even if it destroys me. Sophia nodded. Then that's what you have to do. But she didn't know what came next. The documents Adrian turned over to Catherine Price didn't just expose his father. They exposed 15 other companies, dozens of immigration officials, and a systemic corruption that ran deeper than anyone had anticipated. Within a week, federal indictments were filed. Within 2 weeks, Adrian Sterling's name was everywhere, not as a savior, but as a whistleblower. His company's stock plummeted. His board demanded his resignation. His lawyers told him he faced potential criminal liability for knowing about the corruption and not reporting it sooner. Everything was collapsing. And that's when Elena Vasquez appeared in his office. The immigration lawyer from the class action lawsuit. Mid-30s, dark eyes that seemed to see straight through you, a presence that filled the room with quiet intensity. "I watched what you did," Elena said, not bothering with pleasantries. "You could have protected yourself. You didn't." "I'm still guilty," Adrian said. "My company benefited from my father's crimes." "I benefited." "Yes," Elena said. "You did. And now you're facing the consequences." "That's called accountability, Adrian. Most people with your resources spend their lives avoiding it." She sat down across from him, and something shifted in the air between them. "Rosa's visa was approved this morning," Elena continued. "Class action lawsuit got approval too. 12 families won't be deported. But that's not why I'm here." "Why are you here?" "Because I think you're ready for the real work," Elena said. "Not charity. Not individual rescues. Systemic change. And that requires someone who understands how the system works from the inside. Someone who's willing to burn their own life down to rebuild it differently." She leaned forward. "I think that's you. But I need to know, are you ready to lose everything?" Adrian looked at her, this woman who'd forced him to confront himself, who was offering him a chance at redemption that didn't look like redemption at all, that looked like sacrifice, and realized that somewhere in the past 2 weeks, he'd stopped wanting to be saved. He'd started wanting to actually change. "I'm ready," he said. Elena smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Then let's get started." That night, Adrian called a press conference. Not to defend himself. Not to make excuses. But to announce that Sterling Industries was being restructured. 50% of his personal wealth would be diverted to a new immigration justice fund. The company would implement a living wage requirement for all employees and contractors. And he was stepping down as CEO. Elena Vasquez was being appointed to replace him. The announcement made international headlines. The reactions were mixed. Some called him a hero. Others called it a publicity stunt, a way to rehabilitate his image. His board called it insanity. His former friends called it a betrayal. But Sophia, reading the news in the library she now studied in freely, with tutors Adrian had hired, with a future that was finally actually possible, Sophia called it something else. She called it the beginning. "So, here's what I need to know. Do you think Adrian's changed? Or is he still just a billionaire trying to buy redemption?" Because what happens next will answer that question in a way that will absolutely devastate you. The darkest hour is coming, and Adrian will have to choose between his redemption and the people he loves. Tell me in the comments what you think happens. 3 months into his new life, Adrian Sterling had lost $2.3 billion. Not just in stock value, in actual diverted wealth. The Immigration Justice Fund was growing. The legal cases were moving forward. 12 families would stay. Dozens more were being processed. Elena had restructured the entire company, and despite initial chaos, Sterling Industries was adapting. But Adrian was disappearing. The toll of it all, the guilt, the accountability, the public scrutiny, was calcifying him from the inside. He'd traded one form of emptiness for another. Before, he'd been empty because he had too much. Now he was empty because he was giving it all away and discovering it didn't matter. Sophia noticed first. "You're doing it again," she said, finding him alone in his office at 2 a.m. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The same hour he'd found her in the laundry room, he was now running from something invisible in the dark. "Doing what?" Adrian asked, though he knew. "Building walls," Sophia said. "You think you're being noble, sacrificing everything. But you're just hiding. You're still treating people like problems to solve, not people to actually know." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I'm doing everything you asked me to do. I asked you to change the system. Not to martyr yourself," Sophia said. "There's a difference. And Elena sees it. She's waiting for you to actually be with her, not just work alongside her." Before Adrian could respond, his phone rang. It was a lawyer. Rosa's lawyer. "We have a situation," the lawyer said quietly. Rosa received an offer. A medical position in Singapore. Triple her current salary. The contract is for 3 years. Adrian felt his stomach drop. Is she taking it? She's thinking about it. She says she loves you and Sophia, but she's terrified. She says you're self-destructing, and she doesn't want her daughter watching you do it. She thinks Sophia needs to finish high school in a stable environment. She's thinking about leaving you here. The words landed like a physical blow. That night, Adrian called a meeting with Rosa, Sophia, and Elena. You should take the Singapore position, Adrian said to Rosa, his voice flat. Adrian. Elena started, but he cut her off. She came here for opportunity, Adrian continued, not looking at anyone. I gave her one in exchange for her loyalty. That's not fair. She deserves to build her own life, not be trapped in gratitude to me. You're not trapping me, Rosa said, tears in her eyes. But I'm terrified, Adrian. You're disappearing. And Sophia's starting to disappear with you. Sophia stood up abruptly. Don't do this, she said to Adrian. Don't make this decision for us. Don't decide you're too broken to deserve us. That's just another form of control. But Adrian was already gone, not physically, but mentally. He'd reverted to the thing he knew, unilateral decision-making that felt like generosity, but was actually just another version of power. Take the job, Adrian said to Rosa. Sophia will stay here. She'll finish high school. I'll provide everything she needs. And what about what I need? Sophia's voice was small, devastated. Did you ever think to ask? The silence that followed was absolute. Rosa left for Singapore 2 weeks later. Sophia moved into a guest room in Adrian's mansion. They barely spoke. She went to school, came home, studied, slept. She'd gotten what she wanted: safety, stability, opportunity, and it had cost her everything. Elena tried to reach Adrian, but he'd become unreachable. He went to work, made decisions, attended meetings. But he wasn't there, wasn't present, wasn't actually changing at all. He was just performing change while dying inside. Then came the betrayal. One of Adrian's board members, a man named Harrison who'd been with Sterling Industries for 15 years, leaked Adrian's financial records to a journalist. Not the corruption documents. Those were already public. But private conversations, texts, emails where Adrian expressed doubt about his restructuring plan, where he questioned whether real change was even possible. The story ran under the headline, "Billionaire whistleblower secretly doubts his own redemption." It made him look like a fraud, like someone who'd performed accountability while harboring cynicism. The immigration justice community turned on him. Donors pulled funding. Elena's position as CEO became politically difficult. And the worst part was, it was true. Adrian had been doubtful, had been cynical, had been running on fumes and guilt rather than genuine belief. That's when Sophia came to his office with a piece of paper. Her new school acceptance letter. To a boarding school in Massachusetts. One of the best in the country. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. "I can't watch you self-destruct anymore. You're not helping me by staying. You're just reminding me that even when people try to change, they still fail. And I can't carry that." Adrian looked up at her. This girl who'd changed his entire life, who'd forced him to see himself, and realized she was right. He'd spent months thinking he was changing, but he just transferred his abandonment of himself onto everyone else. He'd abandoned Elena by refusing to let her close. He'd abandoned Sophia by deciding for her. He'd abandoned Rosa by sending her away. "Don't go," Adrian said, but his voice was hollow. She was already gone. "I have to," Sophia said. But Adrian, listen to me. You don't need to be redeemed. You need to be alive. And you're choosing not to be. She left the letter on his desk and walked out. That night, Adrian sat alone in his mansion, in the same spot where he'd sat 5 months ago, before the laundry room, before Sophia, before any of this began. The emptiness was familiar. The loneliness was old. He'd just exchanged his former life for an elaborate version of the same spiritual death. And the worst part was, he could see it clearly now. All the insight, all the accountability, all the systemic change, none of it mattered if he was still choosing to be absent from his own life. Still hiding behind obligation. Still treating people like projects instead of partners.
His phone buzzed.
A text from Elena. "Come home. My home. Stop running." Adrian stared at the message for a long time. And for the first time since this all began, he had to make a choice that wasn't about saving anyone else or changing any system. He had to choose himself. Had to choose to actually live instead of just performing the appearance of living. Adrian showed up at Elena's apartment at 3 a.m. No advance warning. No carefully prepared words. Just a man in a three-piece suit, disheveled for the first time in decades, standing outside her door looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Elena opened the door in pajamas, saw him, and didn't say anything. She just pulled him inside. They sat in silence for 20 minutes. Not awkward silence. Real silence. The kind where two people just exist in the same space. No performance, no negotiation. "I don't know how to be alive," Adrian said finally. "I know how to build empires. I know how to rescue people. I know how to feel guilty. But I don't know how to actually be with someone." "I know," Elena said. "That's why I've been waiting." "How? Is that not unfair to you?" Adrian asked. "Why would you wait for someone this broken?"
Elena smiled.
"Because I'm broken too. But I broke myself open intentionally. You're still holding yourself shut, just with different locks now." She took his hand. "Sophia was right. You need to choose to be alive. Not for her. Not for Rosa. Not for the immigration fund or the systemic change or any of it.
For you.
Because your life matters, Adrian. Even just your life, with no epic purpose attached." Adrian felt something crack open inside him. Not the familiar shame or guilt, but something warmer. Permission. Not to be fixed, but to be human. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "Neither do I," Elena said. "We'll figure it out together." But the next morning, everything shifted again. His assistant rushed into his office with news. Sophia had called. She was coming home from boarding school. Not for a visit for good. She'd withdrawn her enrollment. Adrian's heart jumped, then immediately plummeted.
No.
She shouldn't do this. She should stay. But Sophia arrived that afternoon with her belongings and a clarity in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I left because I was angry at you," she said, sitting across from him in his office. "But I realized something at school. Running from you is just another version of what you've been doing. Hiding. I didn't want that life anymore." "Sophia, your education will be fine," she cut him off. "I'm finishing here. I'm going to finish school, and then college, and then law school, actually. I want to work with Elena on immigration cases. I want to do what you're trying to do, but the right way, not because I'm running from guilt, but because I actually believe in it." Adrian felt tears rise for the first time since his father's crimes were exposed. "I don't need you to rescue me," Sophia continued. "And I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be here. Actually here. Not disappearing into work or guilt or another form of self-sacrifice." She leaned forward. "Can you do that?" Adrian nodded, unable to speak. "Then I'm staying," Sophia said. "Not as your responsibility, as your family." That evening, Adrian called Rosa in Singapore. She answered on the third ring, and the first thing he heard was music in the background, laughter. She sounded happy. Actually happy, in a way he'd never heard before. "I heard Sophia came home," Rosa said. "How did you?" "Elena texted me," Rosa said. "Adrian, I need to tell you something. I'm not coming back." Adrian's chest tightened, but he forced himself to listen. "Not because I don't love you," Rosa continued, "but because I realized I was still running too. I was running from poverty into your gratitude. I was trading one form of obligation for another."
She paused.
"Singapore is giving me something you couldn't give me. It's giving me freedom. Freedom to build my own life, not as someone's employee or someone's charity case." "I understand," Adrian said quietly. "But here's the thing," Rosa added, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm engaged." Adrian blinked. "What?" "His name is David. He's a surgeon. We met at the hospital. He makes me laugh. He doesn't treat me like I need saving. He just treats me like someone he loves." Rosa's voice was steady, sure. "I'm building a life that's actually mine, Adrian. And I want Sophia to see that. To know that it's possible. I'm happy for you," Adrian said and meant it. "Truly." "I know you are," Rosa said. "That's why I could finally leave." The conversation ended with Rosa promising to video call with Sophia regularly, with plans already forming for Sophia to visit Singapore during college breaks. And for the first time, Adrian understood, the goal wasn't to keep people close through sacrifice. It was to love them enough to let them flourish however they needed to. Elena came over that night, and Adrian told her everything.
About Sophia's staying.
About Rosa's new life. About the realization that his entire understanding of love had been inverted. Love isn't about keeping people, Elena said. It's about releasing them toward their own becoming. Is that what you did with me? Adrian asked. I'm trying, Elena said. I love you, Adrian. But I won't save you. You have to do that yourself. I'll walk beside you, but I won't carry you. Adrian pulled her close. Thank you for that. Don't thank me yet, Elena said, stepping back slightly. Because now comes the hard part. Now you have to actually live the change, instead of just performing it. You have to rebuild Sterling Industries to be what you promised. You have to show up for Sophia, without controlling her path. You have to build a life with me that isn't about fixing anything, it's just about being together. Adrian nodded slowly, understanding that this was the real work. Not the dramatic gestures. Not the systemic change, as important as that was. But the daily, unglamorous work of showing up as a human being instead of a savior. I can do this, he said. I know you can, Elena said. But you have to want to. Not for anyone else. For you. And standing there, in his office at midnight, with Elena beside him, and Sophia asleep in a guest room upstairs, and Rosa building a life across the world, Adrian Sterling finally understood what the dying bulb in the laundry room had been trying to teach him all along. It wasn't about the light. It was about the choice to seek it. 3 years later, the office looked different. Not in appearance, same marble, same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, but in feeling. The energy had shifted. People moved through the halls with purpose, not fear. The Sterling Industries that Adrian had once built on ambition and indifference had become something he hadn't planned for, a company where people actually wanted to work. Sophia stood in the immigration courthouse, holding documents that represented 18 months of work. She'd just won her first major case, a class action lawsuit that forced the government to review 53 deportation cases that had been processed incorrectly. 18 families would stay.
18.
Adrian watched from the back of the courtroom, and when Sophia looked up and saw him, her face lit up in a way that made him understand, finally, what pride actually meant. Not pride in his own accomplishment. Pride in someone else's becoming. After the hearing, they met Elena at the coffee shop they claimed as theirs over the past 3 years. Same corner table. Same ritual. 18, Elena said, squeezing Sophia's hand. Do you understand what you just did? Changed people's lives? Sophia offered. Yes, Elena said. But more than that. You proved the system can be changed from within. You proved that the rules are bendable if you're willing to fight for them. Adrian watched the two women, the lawyer and the young legal intern who'd become Elena's protege, and felt something settle in his chest. This was what he'd been searching for all along. Not to change the world single-handedly, but to create spaces where others could. That evening, Adrian's phone rang.
Rosa.
We're coming home, she said. For Thanksgiving. Just a week, but David wants to meet everyone. And I want to show him where Sophia spent those nights studying. I want him to understand who we are. Adrian heard the joy in her voice and felt grateful for a life that had taught him to recognize it. We can't wait, Adrian said. And meant it. When Rosa and David arrived, it was chaos and love and the kind of messy family reunion that Adrian had never experienced before. Rosa had aged backward somehow, her face unlined, her hands soft, her laugh freely given. David was warm and unimpressed by Adrian's wealth, which immediately made Adrian like him. But the moment that broke Adrian open was when Rosa walked into the laundry room. They'd left it mostly unchanged. It was rarely used now, mostly a storage space. But Sophia had put a plaque on the wall. Where light found me. Where I learned to seek it. Rosa read it and cried. Not sad tears. The kind that come when you realize how far you've traveled, how much you've changed, how the darkness you survived actually led you somewhere. I was so afraid, Rosa said to Adrian, her hand on the plaque. I thought if we stayed here, we'd both be trapped by gratitude. I didn't understand that gratitude and love could eventually just become life. Adrian held her while she cried, and he didn't try to fix it or solve it. He just let her feel what she felt. That's when the real test came. 3 months later, Sterling Industries' board made a move. A coalition of older board members, uncomfortable with Adrian's restructuring, filed a motion to remove him as chairman. They didn't oppose his immigration work, they just opposed it at the expense of quarterly profits. We can take them down, Elena said, reviewing the legal documents with Adrian. We have votes. We have documentation showing the company is more profitable now than it was under your old model. But Adrian shook his head slowly. No, he said. We let them go. What? Elena's eyes widened. We let them resign. We accept their opposition, Adrian said. Because if I fight them, I'm still trying to control the outcome. I'm still the savior fixing everything. Instead, I step aside, let the new board I've been grooming take over, and I move into advisory only. Elena stared at him. Do you understand what that means? You'll lose authority. Lose control. Yes, Adrian said. And I'll gain something better. I'll gain the ability to watch other people succeed without my fingerprints all over it. The board restructuring happened smoothly. Adrian stepped back. Sophia, now 21 and working full-time as an immigration lawyer, didn't inherit anything from him. She earned her own position at Elena's firm. Rosa built her medical career in Singapore, building a life that was entirely hers. Elena became the true visionary of Sterling Industries' transformation, and the company flourished under her leadership because it was genuinely her vision, not Adrian's. But here's what nobody expected. Adrian thrived in the background. He started writing essays about systemic change, about complicity, about the illusion of saviordom. He mentored younger entrepreneurs on how to build companies that actually served people instead of extracting from them. He worked with Elena on the immigration fund, but in supporting role, raising money, connecting resources, getting out of the way when others had better ideas. One evening, a year into this new structure, Sophia came to Adrian with a proposal. I want to open a youth program, she said. For kids like I was. Places where they can study, get resources, get mentorship. But not charity. Real partnership. They choose what they need. Adrian listened. And instead of immediately offering money, he asked questions. How would you structure it? Who would lead? What would you need from me? Sophia answered each one. And by the end of the conversation, Adrian realized she didn't actually need him at all. She just wanted him to hear her. I can help, Adrian said. But only if you want that. Only if my help serves your vision, not the other way around. It does, Sophia said. Will you? I will, Adrian said. On the evening that Sophia's first youth center opened, in a renovated building in the Bronx, with a study room where kids could work late at night without their parents worrying, Adrian stood in the back and watched. Watched Sophia teach a girl how to approach her chemistry homework. Watched Elena explain the legal system to a boy whose family was navigating immigration. Watched Rosa, visiting from Singapore, tutor a teenager in English with such patience and joy that Adrian realized she'd finally become the person she was always meant to be. And he understood finally what the light in the laundry room had actually been. It wasn't Adrian's light to give. It was Sophia's light to find. And all the others, Rosa's light to build with, Elena's light to lead with. Adrian's job wasn't to be the light. It was to get out of the way and let others shine. Elena slipped her hand into his. We did good, she whispered. They did good, Adrian corrected, squeezing her hand. We just got out of the way.
Elena smiled.
That's the same thing. 5 years after the night Adrian found Sophia in the laundry room, the study room looked exactly as it had been designed. Not fancy, not imposing, just right. Sophia stood in that room, which now existed in 12 different cities across America, and watched teenagers study under steady LED lights. Not struggling, not desperate, just learning. The program had expanded beyond what any of them had imagined. Not because Adrian threw money at it, but because Sophia had built something real. Adrian wasn't there. He was home, working on a book about complicity in corporate America. Elena had called him away from the center opening, gently reminding him that Sophia didn't need him present for every milestone. That his absence, paradoxically, was one of the greatest gifts he could give. He'd learned to listen. Meanwhile, Sophia received an email that changed everything again, but differently this time. A senator wanted to meet with her about federal legislation, immigration reform, real policy change. Not charity, not programs. Structural transformation. Sophia read the email 3 times, then called Elena. "They want me to testify before Congress," she said, her voice shaking. "I know," Elena said. "I got the same call. They're building a coalition. Your work in the courts made people listen." "Adrian will want to," Sophia started. "Adrian will want to support you however you need." Elena cut her off gently. "Not lead. Not direct. Support." Sophia smiled. It had taken years for her to stop expecting Adrian to insert himself into her victories. Now, when he didn't, it felt like the greatest respect he could offer. Back at Adrian's apartment, Elena found him staring out the window at the city. "She got the call," Elena said. Adrian nodded. And she's going to change federal law," Elena said. "Our Sophia. The girl who studied by a dying bulb in a laundry room is going to reshape how this country treats immigrants." Adrian felt tears rise, the kind that came from watching someone else become their full self, completely independent of you. "I'm not going to be part of it, am I?" he asked. "Would you want to be?" Elena asked.
Adrian thought about it.
The old version of him would have orchestrated everything, made connections, leveraged his wealth and influence to ensure success. Would have made it partly his story. "No," Adrian said finally. "I want it to be entirely hers. I want to watch her from the audience and know I had nothing to do with her brilliance." Elena kissed his forehead. "That's why I'm going to marry you." Adrian looked at her. "Is that a proposal?" "It's a statement of fact," Elena said. "I already have the ring. I'm asking if you're ready to build a life that's about us, not about saving anyone anymore." Adrian pulled her close. "Yes." 3 months later, Rosa called with news. She was pregnant. At 46, after years of believing her life was about sacrifice, she was finally building something she'd chosen, a family with David, on her own terms, in her own time. "I want you to know something, Adrian," Rosa said, her voice full of joy. "I'm not grateful to you anymore. That sounds harsh, but I mean it kindly. I'm not grateful because I don't feel indebted. I feel free. And that's the greatest thing you could have given me, the freedom to stop being grateful." Adrian understood. Gratitude, when it lasted too long, became another form of bondage. When Rosa came to visit, now visibly pregnant, glowing in a way that had nothing to do with Adrian, the 4 of them sat in the study room where Sophia had once studied by dying light. "We should take a photo," Rosa said. "All of us. In this room. As a family." They gathered around a desk where a teenage girl was studying chemistry, the same subject that had started everything. The girl looked up, confused by the adults suddenly surrounding her. "We're just marking a moment," Adrian explained. "This room changed our lives." "How?" the girl asked. Sophia answered. "One person saw another person struggling and decided not to save them, but to see them. And that changed everything." Elena added, "Because seeing is the first step to solidarity. And solidarity is how systems actually change." Rosa said, "And because sometimes the most powerful thing is to step back and let other people shine." Adrian said nothing. He just stood there, surrounded by these 3 women who'd transformed his entire life, and understood that his story had never been about him at all. He'd been a character in their stories the whole time. He just hadn't known it. That night, back at the apartment Adrian and Elena now shared, they made plans. The wedding would be small. Sophia would be Elena's best woman. Rosa would come from Singapore. David would bring new life into the family. Adrian's former board members would not be invited, and Adrian wouldn't think about it even once. The future stretched out before them. not as something Adrian would control or engineer, but as something they would build together, each person bringing their own light. And somewhere, in a mansion Adrian owned but rarely visited, a vault sat unopened. The vault that had once held his father's corruption. Adrian had never destroyed it, but he'd never opened it again either. It existed as a monument to a past he'd acknowledged, but refused to be defined by. His father's legacy was one thing. Adrian's legacy, he'd learned, would be determined not by what he built, but by what he got out of the way so others could build. As Adrian fell asleep beside Elena, Sophia studying late into the night in the room next door, Rosa's pregnancy progressing beautifully in Singapore, and millions of people slowly beginning to understand that immigration reform was possible, Adrian Sterling finally understood the answer to the question that had started everything. Why did he let Sophia hope? Because hope wasn't his to give or withhold. It was hers to create. All he'd ever done was learn to stop standing in her light. Beautiful souls, we've reached the end of Adrian's journey. But really, this is the beginning of everyone else's. What did this story teach you? Was Adrian's redemption genuine? Do you believe people can truly change? Leave a comment. I genuinely want to know what you took from this. And if you made it this far, thank you. Subscribe for more stories like this. Because the most powerful narratives aren't about one person saving everyone. They're about everyone learning to save themselves. See you in the next one.